Hey y'all. So this is ConjureEd's the Hoodoo Elder series, part 3, Emma Dupree. Emma Williams Dupree was born July 4th, 1897 to a formerly enslaved parents, Pania and Noah Williams. She grew up on the Tar River in Falkland, North Carolina. Her mother remembered being on the porch of the Wootens farm when freedom came. The memory of enslavement was not distant history in Emma Dupree's childhood. It was her mother's living memory, present in the house, present in what her mother knew and how she knew it. From the time she could walk, Emma felt drawn to the land. She roamed the woods, plucking, sniffing, tasting, and gathering leaves, stems, roots, and barks. She was not taught this formally, it rose in her. Her community recognized it before she had language to explain it. They called her the woods girl or the little medicine thing. These are not dismissals, they are early namings of something her community already understood that she was. Emma Dupree's garden grown pharmacy included sassafras, white mint, double tansy, rabbit tobacco, maypop, mullein, catnip, horseradish, silkweed, and other plants that she foraged from the Tar River banks. She made salves, teas, and tonics. She was known for her 9 herb tonic. She stowed herbal preparations in repurposed jars and jugs, and in lieu of affixing a label to the mixtures, instructed folks verbally on their suggested use. If you were coming to Emma Dupree for help, you were expected to listen and to remember. That instruction, to listen and to remember, is not incidental. Instead, it is the transmission protocol of the tradition itself. Hoodoo is an oral tradition. It is a listen and remember tradition. We didn't traditionally write things down. Knowledge that lives in her ear and in her body cannot be taken by someone who cannot receive it that way. The preparation was both medicine and pedagogy. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Emma served friends, neighbors, and even mailed out herbs to folks as needed. She was not one to turn away anyone who knocked at her door, even if she wasn't sure whether or not she could help. She did not set a price for her services. She accepted what people could offer. Lemons, vinegar, rock candy, honey, molasses. The practice was community infrastructure, not necessarily commerce. Emma Dupree was 21 years old when the influenza pandemic of 1918 swept through her community. Influenza, the flu, for those of y'all who don't know. She was documented as having totted her teeth. Totted her teeth. I know I'm a little country and I talk a little fast, so I'm going to say that again. She was documented as having totted her teeth, carrying her herbal remedies to aid victims throughout her community. At a time when black residents of North Carolina had virtually no access to formal medical care, she did not wait to be authorized. She did what the tradition had always done. She went to the land and she brought back what it offered. A documentary about her work was put together by researchers from East Carolina University in 1979, and to this day is shown to medical students as a part of their instruction. Not all of them, for the ones who gonna get on here with them stupid comments. The document is titled Little Medicine Thing, her childhood nickname. The North Carolina Folklore Society presented Dupree with the Brown Hudson Award for significant contributions to folk life in North Carolina, and the state of North Carolina presented her with the North Carolina Heritage Award for lifetime achievement, recognizing her as one of North Carolina's premier folk medicine practitioners. She received these honors in her 80s and her 90s. She had been doing the work for 7 decades before the institution's notice, so the recognition didn't come from the recognition didn't make it real. The work was already real and existing. Emma Dupree died March 12, 1996, at the age of 98. In 2022, the town of Fountain unveiled a historical marker on a railroad street near the home where she grew her herbs and made tonics for decades. The marker reads, Herbs and Healing, Emma Dupree, 1897 to 1996, renowned for her remedies made from homegrown plants. Now, this course has argued from session one that hoodoo is not just a belief system, it is a cultural technology, a system of knowledge designed to protect, heal, communicate, and sustain community under conditions that worked against all of those things. Emma Dupree is that argument made flesh. She is a living, well, she was a living, breathing example of what I mean when I say that. Folklorist Karen Baldwin of East Carolina University noted that Dupree was born to a tradition of knowing about the curative and preventative uses of the natural pharmacopoeia which grew along the banks of the creeks and branches and the Tar River, and that her kind of folk medicine dates back centuries. In the 1600s, African slaves brought root doctor remedies to America. Baldwin is right about the lineage and its imprecise about the framing. What she calls folk medicine is not folk in the sense of informal or unscientific. It is the formalized knowledge of the tradition that predates Western medicine on this continent. Knowledge that comes from Africa and also from indigenous Americans, knowledge that was already in the indigenous people who were on this land, and the knowledge that merged and adapted and survived in the bodies and the hands of women like Emma Dupree across 4 centuries. Emma Dupree did not label her preparations. She didn't write down her formulas. She taught verbally and expected her students to hold what she gave them in their memory and in their hands. This is not a gap in the record. This is deliberate future. This is the can't talk. This is a deliberate feature of the tradition. Knowledge that lives in the body that has to always be received person to person, demonstration to demonstration, relationship to relationship cannot be extracted by someone who was not welcome in. It cannot be stolen by someone who only has access to a text. It protects itself through a very form of its transmission. When the ECU researchers came with their cameras, Emma Dupree chose what to show them. She gave them what she chose to give them, and the rest stayed where it belonged. Emma Dupree did not separate plant knowledge from ancestral knowledge. The land along the Tar River was not just a source of material, it was a relationship. The plants her ancestors had used and plants her mother knew, the plants that grew in specific soil of Pitt City, North Carolina, were not interchangeable with plants from everywhere else. The tradition was rooted in that specific ground. This is the indigenous dimension of hoodoo that this course holds explicitly. Plant knowledge in the Black Southern tradition carries both African memory and indigenous memory of this land. In Emma Dupree's hands, both were present. She was not just healing bodies, she was maintaining a relationship between her community and the earth that had been tended for generations. The institutions that eventually documented Emma Dupree called her work folk medicine, folk herbalism, and traditional healing. These are labels that position her knowledge as supplementary, preliminary, and primitive relative to Western medicine. Consider the context that Emma Dupree was providing medical care to black communities in North Carolina that had been systematically excluded from formal medical institutions. She treated fevers, flu, and chronic illness for nearly a century. A documentary about her was eventually incorporated into the instruction of medical students at East Carolina University. The medical school did not validate her knowledge, it came to learn from it. The label folk is a political act. It positions the labeler as a standard and the labeled as a deviation. However, we all know that hoodoo came way before Western medicine. Herbal medicine came before Western medicine. Indigenous practice came before Western medicine. And so therefore it's not a deviation of Western medicine. Instead, it is what came first. Emma Dupree was not practicing folk medicine. She was practicing medicine. The folk part academically added later on. Again, if you are new here, my name is Evelyn Simi Lore. I am the ancestors' favorite girl. I am an Alabama hoodoo, not your favorite hoodoo. I am an herbalist, cultural architect, and spiritual practitioner whose work sits at the intersection of spirituality, culture, and historical exploration. And this is just an excerpt from one of my classes, or one of my courses on my hoodoo, from my ConjureEd series, Hoodoo Elders. This is session 3, all about Emma Dupree. There are 2 more parts to this lesson, along with discussion questions, All of my lessons and all of the things that I talk about come with all of these sources. And there are also a few assignments to go with each of these lessons, especially in the Hoodoo Elder series. So if you want to check that out and you want to see the whole lesson, go ahead to my Patreon, which is linked in my bio, and get the rest of it. Thank y'all for watching. Peace.